My name is Sam Dunn and welcome back to Overkill Reviews. A reminder, if you love this show, please subscribe. Well, what I've been up to since I was last in the bar, well, we just had Canada Day in Canada, and 2 weeks from now, it's the all-metal weekend with Maiden and Metallica, so I've been gearing up for that. But most importantly, I've been listening to this record. That is a track called Never off the brand new album by Poland's Decapitated called Anticult, released worldwide today on Nuclear Blast Records. The story of Decapitated starts back in 1996 when a few Polish teenagers put together a pretty impressive technical death metal band, and their first album called Winds of Creation, released on Earache Records in 2000, really took the death metal community by storm. Why? Well, because these guys were so fucking young and so impressive on their instruments, and arguably really reached a peak with their fourth album called Organic Hallucinosis, when the band started to expand beyond a pure technical death metal sound and started to incorporate more groove and more thrash elements into their sound. In 2007, the band was involved in a major car accident while on tour, and drummer Vitek passed away. And Vitek, of course, is the brother of founding member Vog, main songwriter and guitarist. Also, the vocalist at the time, stage name Coven, suffered major injuries and couldn't continue with the band. Therefore, the band took a bit of a hiatus, but in 2011 came back with a really strong effort called Carnival is Forever. Their most recent album, called Blood Mantra, received mixed reviews. And so here we are, it's 2017. Does Anticult continue on the path established by Blood Mantra? Let's get to the record. The first track I'm gonna dig into is called Impulse. It's the opening song on Anticult. And the song begins with a fairly melancholic, spacey guitar intro where single notes are kind of ringing out, and this has become a more familiar feature with Decapitated's music as their albums have progressed. But never fear, and they hit you with this. So it's pretty clear from that part that Decapitated is continuing in the tradition of more progressive, more off-kilter, varying time signature type parts. This is not a part you would have heard on, say, Winds of Creation or Nihility. Also a feature right from the get-go that I'm noticing on this album is a very Meshuggah-esque feel, which I think we've gradually seen creeping in on more recent albums, where the time signatures are getting more complex and it's really hard to kind of nail on the one. But what Decapitated also makes very clear on Impulse is that they're never going to stray too far from their technical death metal roots, and they still know how to crush you with a blast beat. That's pretty familiar territory there for Decapitated fans, but what's really standing out for me on this record from the very early stages is an absolutely immense guitar tone that Vog has managed to carve out in the studio. Anyway, opening track, kind of showing all the elements we've come to recognize from Decapitated on recent records, that straight-ahead death metal path combined with some slightly more proggy, more spacious sound. We're only one track in, lots more to go. Let's move forward. Next up is track 3 called Kill the Cult, and I'm not going to go into detail on this song, but I had to play it. Why? Because this might be the heaviest riff that Decapitated has ever created, one of the heaviest riffs of the year. Can anyone say Dimebag? Listen to this. Track 6 on the album is called Earth Scar, and up to this point in the record, Decapitated have shown us a pretty mixed bag of extreme metal styles, but with Earth Scar, they go right back to the groove. What Earth Scar is solidifying for me on this record for Decapitated is that groove has become a much more central part of their sound. And in the interviews leading up to the release of this record, songwriter Vogue talked about how really with this album, he just went with the flow, less analysis, and just kind of went with the parts that were feeling right. And I think because of that, we're generally getting a slightly less technical version of Decapitated, certainly compared to their earlier albums. I think also something to note about Earth Scar is this is a song that's probably going to start to push away some of the purist death metal fans that like those earlier records. This is a band that is gravitating towards a slightly more modern, groove-based death metal sound. And another thing we're hearing on Earth Scar that's increasingly becoming part of the Decapitated sound is less fretboard gymnastics in the solo sections and longer, more drawn-out, ethereal guitar passages. I think what these parts are showing really is Vogue maturing as a guitarist and a songwriter. Even though the guy's still only in his 30s, he's becoming almost like a veteran of the death metal scene. But what I'm hearing here is a slightly more Swedish melodic death metal sound in the guitar, particularly Anders Björler from At the Gates, or even early Soilwork. And not all orthodox death metal fans are gonna love this continuing shift in Decapitated sound, but frankly, I think they know how to pull it off. I think they know how to retain those death metal roots from back in the early 2000s with a more diverse sound. Let's go to the last track. Track 7 on Anticult is called Never, and it was the first video track released from the album. And I think what's noteworthy about that is when you have your 6th and 7th song on the album as your video tracks, that's showing a fucking lot of balls. It's not the typical opening track on the record, and I think this speaks to the confidence of Decapitated with this album. Anyway, back to the track Never. Much like the opening song Impulse, Never opens with another one of Vogue's now becoming trademark undistorted picked guitar intros. There's some bends in here that harken back even to Day 69 off Organic Hallucinosis. Do you guys remember how fucking incredible that riff is? Anyway, after that setup, we move into another classic death metal part from Decapitated, where I really think Rasta takes center stage. Rasta really is establishing himself in full force in this section of Never, and I think it's been a bit of an uphill battle for Rasta, because I think for a lot of fans, Coven had become the favorite Decapitated vocalist, but again, I think he's proving his worth here on this record in a pretty major way. Perhaps my only criticism of Anticult lies in the lyrical department. Rasta is dealing with some pretty typical death metal lyrical fare here, with existentialism, individualism, and the state of the world. But when it comes to the music, it's bar none. And this is another contender for the heaviest part of the record. Now that will surely get the pits going this fall when Decapitated hits the road, and I think what it's also showing is that as the albums are progressing, Vogue is becoming more and more comfortable with that slower, again, more groove-based Pantera Dimebag inspired sound. Anyway, we made it to the end of Anticult. Let's go to the verdict. All right, Anticult. There's nothing wrong with this album. It clocks in at 38 minutes, and much like previous Decapitated albums, the band has been very judicious in making sure that their albums come under 45 minutes. And what does that mean? Well, there's absolutely no fat on this record. I kept wanting to spin it and spin it and spin it because every song is super solid, which for me is a bit of fresh air because I feel like a lot of metal records these days are beginning to overstay their welcome. What else? Great songwriting, great production, great vocal delivery. All in all, this may be the best extreme metal album of 2017, and I don't do this very often, but I'm giving it 5 out of 5 skulls on Overkill Reviews. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you want us to review, and subscribe to BangerTV. See you next time.